Somewhere in the middle of the 18th century, David Hume looked out at the edifice of reason and said, in effect, "You built this on sand." He wasn't trying to burn it down. He was pointing out that the foundations, empiricism, logic, causation, were not quite as solid as Enlightenment thinkers hoped. We can never really know anything, Hume warned, except through the frail scaffolding of induction, habit, and inference. The sun rose yesterday and the day before, and so we expect it to rise tomorrow. But there's no law of logic that compels it to. And yet, we wake up each morning, make breakfast, go to work, make decisions. We plan, we judge. We act as if the world is navigable and comprehensible. We have to. The alternative is paralysis. And this tension is not a footnote in the story of reason. It is the story. The most rational thing you can do is admit that you're probably wrong about most things. The second most rational thing you can do is continue forming opinions and taking action anyway. Fallibility is a feature, not a flaw. Philosophical traditions from ancient skepticism to contemporary Bayesian epistemology have emphasized uncertainty, error, and the Stoics taught us to mentally rehearse misfortune because the future is unpredictable. Karl Popper built an entire philosophy of science around falsifiability rather than proof. The scientific method, when stripped to its most fundamental ethic, is a ritual of humility. Devise a hypothesis, test it, and be ready to discard it. But the humility is not the end in itself. It's a tool for improvement. If error is inevitable, then learning is perpetual. Thomas Kuhn showed that scientific paradigms don't evolve incrementally. They lurch from one worldview to another, usually after prolonged resistance. The Copernican revolution didn't happen because astronomers calmly updated their priors. It happened in spite of themselves. And this matters because we like to think of rationality as a kind of certainty. But certainty is dangerous. Rationality is movement. It is, in Richard Feynman's phrase, a willingness to live with doubt. There is a paralysis of infinite skepticism. Why not just reject belief altogether? Why not treat every opinion as provisional, every judgment as tentative, and hold them all at arm's length? Because decision-making is not optional. Every hour that passes is a commitment to one world state over another. You don't get to pause the world until you are sure. Life is a forcing function. Imagine a general before a battle, aware that the intelligence is shaky, the terrain misunderstood, the morale uncertain. They have two choices: make the best call they can, or freeze. But inaction is not neutral. It tips the scales. The moment of indecision is a kind of action, often the most destructive kind. This is the lesson of Clausewitz. Friction is universal, fog is permanent, and war is made not by the perfectly informed, but by the decisively uncertain. The same is true of policy, science, art, investing, parenting. All of the things worth doing are done in a storm of ambiguity. Bayesian reasoning has become a kind of gold standard for rational thought. Its elegance is in its formalism. You start with a prior belief and then update it as new data arrives. The math is straightforward, but the psychological habit is not. It requires you to constantly revise, to treat no belief as sacred, to stay light on your epistemic feet. But even the most devout Bayesian eventually has to act. Updating your priors infinitely isn't possible. You always act on incomplete evidence. This doesn't make you irrational, it makes you human. It also makes you potentially more rational if you acknowledge it. Rationality isn't the eradication of error, it's the management of it. Decision-making itself can be a moral imperative. Winston Churchill, who often believed himself wrong in exactly the wrong direction, nevertheless understood the cost of indecision. During the lead-up to World War II, he found himself howling against the winds of appeasement. He may have overestimated the threat at times, underestimated it at others, but the worst error would have been to wait until all uncertainty vanished. The morality of judgment isn't always about being right. Sometimes it's about refusing to abdicate responsibility in the name of epistemic purity. Leaders don't get to say, we don't have enough data, therefore we will do nothing. Nobody ever has enough data. The utilitarian calculus, the virtue ethicist's dilemma, the deontologist's duty, each must ultimately resolve into action. Choosing to deliberate endlessly is not a higher moral ground. It is its own kind of ethical failure. We live in that contradiction. It may feel uncomfortable to hold two contradictory thoughts at once. I'm probably wrong and I must act anyway. But this is not a bug in our cognition. It's a central feature of what Daniel Kahneman called thinking fast and slow. Our fast intuitions are necessary, often dangerous, and sometimes all we've got. Our slow cognition corrects, updates, but cannot always catch up in time. Consider medicine. A doctor suspects a diagnosis. They know they might be wrong. There is a test, but it takes a week. The patient needs treatment now. And so they act. And this is not arrogance. This is courage informed by humility. Literature is full of characters who err by acting too confidently, but it's also full of those who fall by waiting too long. Hamlet's fatal flaw was not belief, it was hesitation. He thought himself into paralysis. Macbeth errs in the opposite direction, to be sure, but both are reminders that moral agency lives in the shadow of uncertainty. The goal is not to be paralyzed by uncertainty, nor to pretend it away. The goal is to live inside it. The internet hasn't helped with this. In theory, the digital age should have made us better at it. More data, faster feedback loops, real-time updates. But something happened on the way to utopia. Social media didn't evolve into a marketplace of ideas. It turned into a tribunal. To say I was wrong is to hand your rhetorical enemies a weapon. To say I believe this is to risk being flattened by a dozen bad faith counterexamples. The incentive structure punishes provisional beliefs and rewards confident ignorance. Online discourse is less like Bayesian exchange and more like a medieval trial. Guilt is preordained and confession is weakness. The most dangerous consequence is not bad opinions. It's the erosion of the norm that opinions should and can change. People start optimizing for consistency, not accuracy. They treat prior beliefs like sunk costs. It's reputational accounting, not hygiene. But opinions can be bets. In the book Thinking in Bets, former poker champion Annie Duke argues that opinions should be framed as wagers. You make a prediction, assign a probability, and update based on results. This works well because it aligns belief with risk. You have skin in the game. But betting only works if you accept that you will lose some. In fact, if you never lose, you're not betting honestly, you're anchoring. You're refusing to make predictions unless you are certain of winning. What Duke recommends, and what rational action demands, is a kind of exposure therapy to being wrong. The more often you're wrong and survive, the less allergic you become to admitting it. Being wrong in private is one thing. Being wrong in public is an entirely different animal. It feels worse, it costs more, it sticks. But public reasoning is essential. In a democracy, in a scientific community, in a startup, ideas must be shared before they are perfect. Debate must precede conclusion. This means defending ideas that might not survive. It means sharing opinions that might embarrass you later. The rational public intellectual, policymaker, entrepreneur, or citizen has to get good at two things: acknowledging fallibility and still pushing forward, not performing humility as a shield, but integrating it into the structure of their thought. The alternative is silence, and silence too is a form of cowardice. To say I'm probably wrong is not defeatism. It is intellectual sobriety. To say I will act anyway is not recklessness. It is commitment in the face of uncertainty. We think of rationality as a destination or a state of mind, but it might be better understood as a posture, a way of standing in the world, chest open, eyes forward, one foot in doubt, the other in action. You will be wrong, often. You will also be right, occasionally. But more than either of these, you will be moving. And movement over time is how the world gets better.